Welcome to Mobile Armor Radio, the podcast for all things mecha.
Welcome to the special edition of Mobile Armor Radio. I guess it's going to be 30.5. We're here with a special guest to talk about a Kickstarter that's coming out. Our guest here is Matt Click, and the Kickstarter is the Mecha Hack Mission Manual. It's what would you call it, a supplement to the original Mecha Hack?
Yeah, it's sort of a supplement, but also a sequel. It's a little bit more than a supplement, but not quite a whole new edition of the game. So
cool. Yeah, so I guess I should introduce myself. I'm Rob.
And I'm Pat.
And that's Matt, who is the
Matt.
Kickstarter creator.
Yes, hello.
And we're here to discuss this great, cool-looking RPG. So, first of all, we might as well get right into it. How'd you start in with gaming in general and mechs in more specific?
Yeah, for sure. So, I have been playing tabletop role-playing games for a long time. I started with the old Star Wars D6, the West End Games edition of the game back in the day. Actually, I have my own version of that game out floating around the internet called Hyperspace D6. I can't, promote it in any official capacity because I don't want Mickey Mouse to break down my windows.
Yeah, for sure.
But so I got my start with that game and moved on to trying D&D and Savage Worlds and just all kinds of different games. And I got into Mecha probably around the same time. Actually, I discovered Robotech, and it was on like late at night on some channel in like the hundreds. I was able to watch syndicated Robotech, and it was just the coolest thing I'd ever seen. It was the ships, the fighter jets transforming, and the designs of the mecha. And I was a big fan of Transformers when it originally aired, but this was kind of like it was something different, because it had the pilot aspect, and it was more about like war, and it just had some kind of like mature themes that were being told by this cartoon, which I mean that's sort of one of the benefits of anime, I suppose. So I got started with Robotech, and then around the time I was 12 or 13, Toonami started airing Gundam Wing, and that just changed my world. I had never seen something as cool as Gundam Wing. I had no idea that there was this entire other universe out there of Gundam shows. I was absolutely obsessed with Gundam Wing and Endless Waltz, and I started building the model kits and writing hundreds of pages of fan fiction of the Gundam Wing characters and stuff. Nice. And then eventually discovering the Universal Century timeline and just devouring the original Mobile Suit Gundam and 08th MS Team and all that good stuff. So I'd say that like mecha and RPGs they've been along the same sort of like a ley line through my life, where they've just sort of been a constant ever since I discovered them. A lot of hobbies kind of come and go as you age, but RPGs and mecha have always been there for me. So, around 5 years ago, a bunch of buddies of mine, we all started a tabletop RPG publisher, which was the best idea and the worst idea we've ever had. It's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun as well. And we've been publishing stuff for a few years now. We've got a few books under our belt, and we recently, I'd say 2 or 3 years ago, started funding our books on Kickstarter, which is a lot of RPG creators know Kickstarter is a really awesome tool to both fund books ahead of time, which is very difficult to do as an indie dev. You don't usually have a ton of money hanging around that you can spend on things like art and proof layout and stuff like that. So Kickstarter's been very good for us. And in 2018, I released a little game called the Mecha Hack, and I actually, going back to Gundam Wing, I wrote it because I had a cousin who was coming into town who was a big fan of Gundam as well, and I wanted to run a Gundam Wing game for him. And I'm like, I don't know, like, what am I going to use to run this game? And I'm looking at like Fate. Maybe I could like do a little Fate hack to do Gundam. I'm looking at, some heavier, crunchier systems. I'm looking at the Cypher system, Genesis, and then I'm finally like, what if I just make my own? Like, what if I take a game that I really like and I make it, useful to run mecha games? And so I was obsessed at the time with this game called the Black Hack, which is it's kind of a D&D-esque, old school Renaissance sort of game written by a friend of mine named David Black. And there's actually a first and a second edition of that game out there, and they're both really, really good. So I took sort of the foundation of the Black Hack and stripped away everything D&D about it, replaced the ability modifiers that most people are used to, the strength and the dexterity and the charisma and stuff, and replaced it with power, mobility, system, and presence. And I just built an entire system around that. So I made it for myself, and I played through it, and I liked it. This feels really good. Made characters super quickly. It's really easy to build stuff for it. So I'm going to put it out there officially and see if people like it. And 2 years later, it's a platinum bestseller on DriveThruRPG, and people really enjoy the game and run it all the time. So it's kind of insane. I just wrote this game over a weekend or whatever, and people really, really like it. So long story short, it's now 2 years later, and I have a ton of extra materials sitting around that I've created for the game, extra chassis, extra pilots, and I decided to do a supplement for the book. And the bulk of the book is one-page missions to run with the system. So all kinds of fun, sort of tropey mecha, chases and escort missions and dropping in through the atmosphere and into a battle, stuff like that, is sort of the bulk of the book. So that was a long-winded way of me saying, like, I'm a big mecha geek and a tabletop RPG nerd, and the Mecha Hack is sort of my love letter to both of those things. So.
Yeah, I definitely could tell when I was reading through all the modules, the add-ons for the mechs, that there's a lot of things I'm like, oh, that's from this, oh, that's this, oh, it's so good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I can picture the situations, which is awesome.
Totally. There's a lot of one of my partners at Absolute Tabletop, the publisher, likes to use the phrase legally dissimilar, and there's a lot of legally dissimilar Robotech and Gundam and all kinds of stuff. And they're even like Titanfall. Like, just anytime I watch a mecha property or play a mecha game, I'm like taking notes. I'm like, ooh, that's cool. I want to put that in the Mecha Hack, and I sort of write it down and make it for it later. So.
Yeah, earlier Pat and I were rolling up call signs too, because that is the coolest list of names.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
We've got 20 more in the new book.
Oh,
There's
nice.
a whole new D20 roll table of call signs. So
because we're like, yeah, this is like the best of Pacific Rim kind of names. Like, it's such
totally, yeah.
You got a forename and a surname. What was yours, Pat?
Viking Horizon.
Yep.
And then I actually rolled Viking,
great.
but I re-rolled, so I got Phobia Lucifer, which I thought was awesome too.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, it was so fun. But that's the best thing about this. It's a lot of ways just you can choose, but you can also just roll for it, which is, I think, that's a fun way to get into the game too. I love rolling on charts and stuff like that. So
absolutely, yeah. That's sort of our bread and butter at Absolute Tabletop is roll tables. We love random generators, and I just find myself, whenever I'm running a game or prepping for a game, I find myself rolling on a lot of tables just to help kind of spark inspiration and ideas and stuff. So,
yeah, I really like the kind of minimalist aspect of this role playing game. I mean, there's just enough to make you nod your head, and then just enough missing to keep the game moving at a very brisk pace.
Oh, totally. Yeah. And that's something that I really didn't anticipate when I wrote the game is people get very strategic with the game, and there are lots of different ways to there's this mechanic in the game called the reactor die, and it's kind of the main resource that gets taxed by your different abilities. And so rather than having people track, my reactor level or your energy points or whatever, anytime you do something that taxes your mecha, you roll your reactor die. And it's, usually starts at like a D10 or a D8. And if you roll low enough on the reactor die, it downgrades to like a D6 or a D4. And people have really sort of gamed the system and figured out like the best ways, the best modules to combine, and the best like chassis fire team to really max out reactor dies. And it's really fun to see people do that and just pull off these insane results in the game. I run a bi-weekly game where it's very Gundam inspired. The characters are all sort of like teenage, cybernetically enhanced mecha pilots, and one of them last session managed to, or I guess this was 2 sessions ago, managed to, by charging up their weapon and doing a bunch of other stuff and utilizing a bunch of their modules, they were able to destroy an entire space cruiser in a single shot from this like Buster rifle weapon. And it's like, part of me is like, oh man, like this game can really get insane with the amount of damage you can do. But the other part of me is like, but that's Gundam, like that. Yeah. Like doing a big push and taking out a space cruiser with a single shot is so mecha. So it really gets across that in a very simple way that I'm like sort of very pleased with. So
yeah, it's all about the action and the set pieces kind of, and I can see that in this game too, that where you just set yourself up for exciting things to happen and everybody's just cheering at the table kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
And for the expansion, the what is it? What's the Kickstarter?
The mission manual.
Mission manual, yes.
Yeah.
You're doing also like out of mech kind of edition to it too. I saw on the Kickstarter.
Yeah, that was a feedback that we got in the initial book. Is it was a very like conscious design decision to not futz around with okay, well you have your pilot and then you have your mecha. Like most mecha games will do, you have your stats for your pilot and then your stats for your mecha, and you're kind of tracking stuff for each of them. And, that's great if that's the kind of game that you want to play. And a lot of people really enjoy that sort of like tactical, like granular sort of RPG experience. But for me, it was like, the pilot and the mecha are one and the same. Like they're the same character. You don't think of Hero Yui and Wing Zero being separate entities. Mm-hmm. They're kind of the same, and so I went into it with that design goal very, very intentionally. But a lot of people were like, what do you do when you get out of the mech? Like what sorts of things can you do if you open the cockpit and get out? And so we wrote up some very simple rules where you can do things outside of the mech. And you can utilize these skills that you otherwise wouldn't be able to utilize. Like, you can get out and do like hacking or espionage. You can sneak around. You can do like martial arts, acrobatics, stuff like that. So, yeah. So it's just a simple way to add that in if it's something that you want. It's not necessarily like hey, this is a new rule. We call them modular rules. It's like if you're into on foot stuff, then you can use these rules in your Mecha Hack game, and that'll allow you to do the sort of out of cockpit play.
Because when you have a bunch of PCs, they're always going to try to do something. You're like, oh, I got it. What's the rule for that?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And as I run the game a lot, and as the game's designer, I'm constantly like taking notes of like, all right, well, this player tried to do this and it was stupid, so I got to come up with some sort of rule to, facilitate that or whatever. So, yeah. But luckily, as I mentioned, the system itself is really, really flexible, and it's very difficult to like quote unquote break it, just because the dice are already very like swingy. They either roll really low or really high for you. So it's really easy to design stuff for the game and sort of have rules that just sort of like plug in where you need them to.
Yeah, and I do like in the basic game too. It's not super killy. Pretty much you get knocked out and you're out for that like battle, but you can get back up again. You're not going to be murdered mercilessly in the streets. But I do notice also that you have the hardcore mode coming up too.
Yeah, that was another thing that people were asking for, is they wanted to run like a little bit more grittier, like do kind of like Battletech style, or even, something like 08th MS Team, where it's a lot more like kind of grounded and gritty in the stories that it's telling. So the hard mode rules, they factor in like ammo. You can run out of ammunition in your weapons and have to reload them. Your reactor can potentially explode. So if you get disabled, you have to like get out of your mech and get away, because the reactor might melt down and explode. So lots of fun stuff like that. So
yeah, that's fun to just add a little extra granularity if people want it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that people have found a lot of different play style, because people use this system for different things. I've seen people run Voltron. People have run like Warhammer, like doing like instead of mecha, they'll do like a Terminator armor or even like Space Marine armor. I've seen people do Starfighter games, like even doing like using the chassis as Starfighters instead of mecha, and so there's a lot of different things that people have done with the system, and rather than like buck against that and be like, that's not what this game is for, I want to like embrace that and be like, that's super creative. I love that you use the game for that. So like, I want to facilitate that style of play for those that want it.
Nice.
Yeah.
I did notice you also have that module that you can have vehicle modes too, so you have Transformers built in right there too.
Yep, and that's I have a player in my biweekly game who that's his entire thing is he loves Robotech and he wanted to be a Veritech fighter. So I was like, all right, well, here's what we'll do. We'll give you missile barrage and the vehicle mode and you'll be good to go.
There you go.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's amazing how it's such a simple thing. It's just so much variety built in. Like I think you hit on something perfectly where it's just enough that you also have rules to like build your own modules too. So if you see something in an anime that you like, you can always just build it right in.
Yep, exactly. And it's easy enough to even take something that is, similar enough and just reskin it. There's a chest beam module that people have used to do like a big energy cannon or, a shoulder mounted energy cannon. It's like, you just take the thing that most closely represents what you're trying to achieve at the table and you can just reskin it super easily. And a game like this where it's so minimal, you feel, I don't know, people feel like empowered to make stuff for it. Like it's constantly have players like, hey, I came up with a module. Can I use this? And I'm like, yeah, go for it. Like I had a player who created basically like a Harrow module. They had like a little spherical like co-pilot in the cockpit with them, and they wanted to create a module for it. And I was like, yeah, go for it. Like there's nothing that you're going to do that's going to break the game in any meaningful way. So just like go for it.
Yeah, because the GM has just as much control to throw bigger things at you or other creatures.
Yep.
Different
Yeah.
ways to make it useful. And
having the reactor die be such a sort of like integral part of the game it's such an easy thing where it's like, okay, well, I want to do this thing and it's really powerful. It's like, okay, cool. Well, you have to roll your reactor die. Like it's such an easy way to create like a risk reward sort of system within the game where you can really do some insane stuff. You can, cover insane distances. You can attack multiple times per turn, but like anytime you're doing something crazy like that, you're going to be rolling your reactor die to see what happens. And there's potential of you to, melt down your mech, trying to do that stuff. Or, in the case of, we have a, Evangelion inspired chassis in the new book called the Hybrid, where if your reactor melts down, your mecha goes berserk and you start attacking your allies. And yeah,
I was trying to figure out how to ask you some of the inspiration, some of these chassis, and then you answered my question right there. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Each one is definitely inspired by a very specific sort of type of mecha, I'd say. Like I
didn't want to give all the chassis away out of the new book, so I was trying to figure that, but that was the one that struck my curiosity.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. The Hybrid is definitely. Yeah, they've all been announced. The Hybrid is definitely Evangelion inspired, and then like the Colossus is very much like Iron Giant almost in what it can do, and then there's the Vanguard, which is sort of like the Vanguard is sort of like the just bleeding edge sort of mecha that's very prevalent in the genre, where it's like, oh, it's experimental. It hasn't been tested in the field. So we're going to put a teenager in the cockpit and see what happens. That sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, even the original ones too. Well, you can talk about the drawings too. You have amazing artwork in this book.
I was going to ask who was the illustrator for your guys?
Yeah, so the artist who works with us, his name is Brandish Gilhelm. He's also known as Hankering for a Nail. He has a YouTube channel, and he's a game designer in his own right. He runs Runehammer Games. He is a really good friend of ours, and someone that we've worked with multiple times in the past, and he's also probably just the best mecha artist I know in terms of like creating unique silhouettes for mecha. And we really honed in on this sketchy style, and it was like a really like intentional design choice to just have it be black and white art. I don't know why, but it just like I don't know, it paired really well with the mechanics, where it's like the mechanics are so simple, and kind of the mechanics themselves are kind of rough around the edges, where it's like, it doesn't really tell you exactly what it does. You kind of have to use your own interpretation, and that's the art really carries that forward. And so even if you're flipping through the book and you're not reading it, you're seeing this art and you get a sense for how the game plays, and you can see that it's cartoony and sketchy and, just like very like high concept sort of stuff, where it's like it really gets across this sense of how the game is played. And so we're really fortunate to have him as someone that works with us, and he just cranks these amazing pieces out. So, and I can't wait to see what else he's going to create for this book. So
it definitely does go hand in hand with the book, like you said. So
yeah, I love it. Just you look at these sketches, and it gives you just enough that you'd be like, oh, that reminds me of this or that. And it's not necessarily the same thing. Like I don't know if you designed the Scout to be like Pat Labor, but it really gives me the Pat Labor feel. And I'm like, oh, that's so cool.
Exactly.
I would love to use it like that. Like it's
yeah.
And then I just love the art.
The joy
it's so
of
good.
working with someone who gets mecha and who has consumed a lot of mecha media in his life is you can see the inspirations, which is very intentional. It's like we're not going to beat around the bush of this is definitely an EVA unit. It looks like an EVA unit, and that's okay. Like I said, it's legally dissimilar. Yeah,
it's similar, but it's not the same. Yeah. It's just, it gives you that impression, but it might give someone else a different impression if they have different background. It's open enough that you could give other people ideas. It's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I like the fact that you don't, it's not like it's a brawler. That's just a type of mech. It's not specific mech. You can use anything you wanted as long as it fits within that kind of idea, right? It doesn't have to look exactly like this mech on the page. It could be whatever you decide, especially if you want to use miniatures, whatever you can use.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. And I think that is really kind of hanging our hat on archetypes and tropes of just you see the brawler and you see kind of what it looks like and what it can do mechanically. And you can think of 3 or 4 examples in media of a brawler. You can think of things in Battletech that would be brawler chassis, things in Gundam that would be brawler chassis. And that's kind of the idea is all of this stuff is archetypical. The pilots, the Quipster pilot. We all know who the Quipster pilot is. That that character in Voltron who's, eating in the cockpit and cracking jokes. That's the Quipster. And if you've consumed any amount of mecha media, you can find those little anchor points of stuff that you've seen in shows or comics or whatever and have loved. And if you're not into mecha, it's actually a good way to kind of grok the genre, because you're seeing oh, these are the tropes of the genre. These are the archetypical sort of pilot characters. These are the different kinds of things that mecha can do. And it kind of helps get people into the genre, which is exciting as well. So
yeah, and I like the idea that you have a pilot and then you choose your pilot and you could choose your mech and mix and match, and there's lots of different combinations too, that's a fun way to do it too.
Totally, yeah, and you can get the different pilot abilities and chassis abilities kind of pair in different and exciting ways, and you can find sort of oh, I wonder if I did this and did this pilot ability with this chassis. If you do a Maverick Brawler, it's a really devastating combination because you're able to move really quickly and do the charging strike, and then you can do a reckless attack with your Maverick, and it's that's just a match made in heaven,
Oh, can you imagine? I did have a question with the rolling with the attributes. As I was making my character, there was that rule. If you roll 15 or higher, then you got to roll your next attribute 2d6 plus 3. Is that something you just kind of thought up, or is that something that's prevalent in other RPGs that I haven't seen before?
Yeah, so that is actually something that is from the Black Hack, so the system that the Mecha Hack is based on. And I like that rule because it ensures that if you do roll a high attribute, that you aren't necessarily going to roll another super high attribute.
You can't have all kind of a way to across the board.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just a way to kind of balance it out a little bit. And truth be told, I I do love rolling for stats, but I also, in Mission Manual, we included a bunch of stat arrays that you can pull from, so that, just pre-rolled stats, depending on how competent you want the pilots to be. So if they're like new recruits, like just out of Mecha Academy, they might have less good stats than a veteran who's, been in the cockpit for years or whatever. And that's a nice way to get that feeling across without necessarily having to have everyone be like level 5 or 6 or whatever starting out. Like, you can be competent and be level 1. So,
and it gives you room to improve too. I like how you roll over your stat when you're leveling up, and if you do, you can increase your stat. Like, it's so brilliant. Like, so you're never going to be super powerful. Because it's always going to be harder to get better. Like, that's fun.
Exactly. The better you are at something, the more time it takes to improve it, which, I mean, is like, that's kind of how things work in real life too. So it's a nice little, analog there. Yeah,
I think the combination between the Black Hack and what you did with the Mecha Hack, I think it's just, it worked out perfectly. It just seemed to be waiting for you to invent it.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where I really didn't anticipate it working as well as it did. I do a lot of just like weird game design where I'm just like sitting on my phone and I have an idea for a dice mechanic, or, hey, what if I took this system and used it for this or whatever. And taking the Black Hack and doing a mecha game was, I think I messaged David Black and I was like, hey, has anyone ever done a mecha game using Black Hack? And he was like, not that I can think of. And I was like, okay, dibs. Like, like, I'm going to do it. I want to do it. Don't let anyone else do it. And he was super open to the idea. So, it goes to show that, like, if you take something like the Black Hack that is like a super versatile, just like very streamlined, very simple system, it's very easy to like kind of strip it down to down to the studs and, build out what you want to have it accomplish. So.
Yeah, it's really great. Well, let's talk about the Kickstarter. You have it going on right now. By the time this comes out, you probably will have about 2 weeks left in the Kickstarter.
Yeah,
and it's doing well. It's far funded, and
it's doing really well. Which is we weren't really sure how it was going to go. It's kind of a busy time of year, and people tend to be tightening the old belts this time of year, coming up on the holidays. So we weren't really sure how it was going to do, but it was really important to us that we get it funded so that we could get it out early next year. And it's been doing really well. We're about to crack 18K today, which is really awesome. That will be another stretch goal for us. The original goal was 5,000. We hit that on the first day, and it's been fairly steady ever since. We haven't really seen that Kickstarter plateau where you just kind of like meet your goal and then just kind of trickle for a couple weeks, and then you get a big boost at the end. So we've been pretty consistent every day. So it's been fun to watch and see people getting excited about it. So
yeah, hopefully you do get that big burst at the end still too. That'd be nice for you. But
yes, that would be very exciting.
Yeah, I think the idea of those one-page missions, like, that's pretty much what it's for. That's such a good idea. It's just simple guideline, and then the GM just expands from what that little guideline is to create a whole real, like, module. I guess module means something different in your game. But D&D totally. Module idea, but
yes. No, totally. And that was another thing that, like, when I started writing this book pretty much immediately after Mecha Hack came out a couple of years ago. And when I first started writing it, it was much more like traditional sort of like D&D adventures where it's like, here's a enemy stronghold and you have to explore it and go in different rooms. And it's like it even got as far as playtesting, and it just was like, this doesn't feel like Mecha Hack. Like, this doesn't feel like Mecha. This feels like D&D with robots. And so it's like I really had to kind of step back and look at what I wanted to do with it. And I just kind of thought about like the design principles of the game, and also like the kinds of things that I like to write and the kinds of things that I like to run as a game master. I was like, if I had a book of like a couple dozen missions, just like a one-page mission, I could run the mission just with one page open in the book. Like, that would be so killer. And so the biggest hurdle for us in designing that template, that format for the adventures, was like keeping it to about 400 words. It's like, it's it's tough to get in everything you want in a single page, especially with it's an A5 size book, so it's not even a full 8.5 by 11 page. It's like, it's really, really tiny amount of words. But really getting it down to the essentials, I think, was a really important process. And I'm really, really happy with how they look and how they run. And I've run a bunch of these missions with zero prep, just completely like, all right, we're going to run this mission. I've got the mission in front of me. Let's go. And I've run them, with prepping beforehand, rolling some stuff and altering them and modifying them to my own specific taste and to suit the players that I have with me and stuff. So I hope people will like them. And we brought on a bunch of different writers to write a bunch of these missions. So there's a lot of variety there for sure.
Yeah, I love that because it's so fun just to be able to, I want to play a game tonight. Okay, I don't have to think about it for a week and do all the little details and stuff. You just open her up and start going. And like I always say, the characters are going to screw up whatever you think of anyway, so you might as well just stick with just the bullet points of where you want to get everybody and how you get there. They can decide how you get to those points.
It's so true.
Yeah.
The reality is, as a GM, you could probably put something together in 30 minutes or less.
Yeah. Just drop it right down and you have to read through that page. That's all you have to do.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, even rolling up characters you could probably be included in that 30 minutes. It's so fast.
Yeah. That's, the one thing I hear a lot about this game is that people love it for convention games. Cause it's really easy to just get a group together, roll up some mecha and play for a couple hours. But it's also great for if you're running a D&D game and a player doesn't show up. Okay, well, what are we going to do tonight? Oh, you know what? Let's play Mecha Hack. We can make characters in 3 minutes, and I got a bunch of missions here. Let's go. Let's just run through one of these Mecha Hack missions. And so hearing people talk about, this is my go-to rainy day game. You know what I mean? Like people don't show up for the game, or I just need a quick game to be able to run, I pick up Mecha Hack. That was really cool to hear. So we wanted missions that facilitated that, but also we wanted missions that could be strung together into a campaign, because we want people to know that this is a good game for running campaigns. The players will love playing through these missions, working with the different factions of the universe, getting new modules at different levels. That's always a fun thing. So I think that people will love running these missions as one shots, but also stringing them together and creating really fun campaigns as well. Yeah.
And the best thing I think we used to play when I was a kid, when we'd play role-playing games, the rules barely mattered. It was all about creating your character in your head and playing it out, and we sometimes would even roll a die for the whole thing. So it's nice to be able to do that with this, where you have when you do get in combat, you have the rules, but you don't need rules to be out of combat or to actually role play. So I think that would facilitate this for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Anything else, Pat, you can think of?
No, I think it's a great little product here, and I'm glad to be a part of it now.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. We're definitely going to play some Roll20 in this. We've been, this would be perfect for that. And also, we come from a, tabletop miniature game background, and
right.
This works great for that, too, if you want to really just play it out on once you say, you get some battle mats out and use miniatures, the rules work well for that, too. So, I think it's beautiful.
I had a guy who ran a trilogy of Battletech games using this, and he got out the old HeroClix Battletech miniatures and used those. I've got a bunch of 3D printed mechs that I use all the time. I've used my Gunpla, I've used Gundam models before, where it's all right, this is your mech. And these are the enemy mechs or whatever, and we played it using that. So it's really versatile. It just does whatever you need it to do to run the mecha game that you want to run.
Yeah, that's why it does open up so much variety to whatever you want to run. If you really wanted to run a Evangelion or something game or even Patlabor, do cop battles with Patlabor. That you have stats for industrial mechs and stuff, which is awesome. So.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, on your most recent episode, you guys were talking about Votoms, and I was like, oh shit, I need to run a Votoms game with Mecha Hack. I was just
perfect,
I gotta make that happen. Yeah.
like it works with anything. That's the beauty of it. And you could pretty much find, with just what you already have, you could build any mech that you could think of, I think. Like, it's just amazing. Yeah. And then the additions, you're going to double up the different chassis and different pilots in this the mission manual. So that's just going to expand even more to variety for role playing. Like, the pilots are really the character wise, which is fun, how they would play and stuff. So you're not just all just robots in giant robots. You got some character behind it too. I like that.
Totally. Yeah. And the new pilots are very like thematic. Like, we have the Bionic, which is like a cybernetically enhanced character. We've got the Pariah, which is very much like the new type, or, the young sort of outcast Gundam pilot. So there's a lot of fun stuff in here, and it's fun to take stuff that I really love and that I've grown up with, but haven't necessarily had an audience for. And now I put it in a game, and I'm like, hey, this is stuff that I love, and people will pick it up and play with it. And it's cool to see other people playing with my toys, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Matt, it's been great you've been on. What's the best way to contact you if anybody wants to talk to you online or?
Yeah, so I'm pretty active on Twitter. I'm just at Matt Click. Click is CLICK. I'm also pretty active on what am I trying to say? Hang on. Oh, we have a community on Facebook. The Absolute Tabletop official group on Facebook is a really easy way to get in touch with me. And if you want to see some of the other stuff that I work on, AbsoluteTabletop.com has all of our products. And I also have my own professional site, mattclick.com. So I do freelance work. So if you ever need anyone for editing or proofreading or game design, I do that as well. That's my main job these days. So
awesome.
Yeah.
I guess so.
You guys have me on. It's been great.
Well, it's our pleasure. And just, I'm sure you just said this, but I just want to clarify it for everyone. In case everyone doesn't make it into the Kickstarter and get the Mecha Hack original book, they can get it at your website, the tabletop game website you said?
Yeah, so the core book is currently available in PDF and print on AbsoluteTabletop.com as well as DriveThruRPG.com. And we'll also be accepting late pledges through our pledge manager. So if for whatever reason, if the budget is tight right now, if you just don't have the means, we will be accepting late pledges after the Kickstarter ends as well. So
that's great news. So the game is available now, just in case, and you can't make the Kickstarter, but if you can, late pledges. And it's something, if you are a true mech fan, something you shouldn't pass up on, coming from someone who is a mech fan.
I appreciate that. That's high praise for sure.
Well, thanks for being on. We will be back in 2021 for our next episode. Until then, I've been Rob.
And I've been Chopper.
And I was Matt.
And we'll see you later. Go back this Kickstarter, people.
Thank you.
This has been Mobile Armor Radio. Join our Facebook group by searching for Mobile Armor Radio. Find us on Twitter at @MArmorRadio. Find us on iTunes and visit our website, mobilearmorradio.podbean.com. Join us on the first of every month for more mecha discussion.